Hi guys, welcome back to AFTV and welcome back to Straight Outta Colney. We had a surprise, surprise press conference because obviously Arsenal playing Palace on the Monday night, not playing over the weekend. We've just had the international break. I really thought Arteta would be doing one of these on a Friday perhaps, but hey, he's dropped one on a Thursday. So there you go, the unpredictability of Arsenal. But we are here just to chat about, for the next 10-15 minutes or so, what he's been saying, what he's been asked about, a lot of stuff on Patrick Vieira, some interesting updates around Martinelli, Guendouzi. We're going to go into all that, and as always, any questions, anything you want to chat about, any comments, leave them in the comment section below, and don't forget to like and subscribe on this video too. Now, I'm going to rattle straight through it, because it's kind of the case when you've got one of these first press conferences in a while. News gathers, builds up, the media in front of Arteta again for the first time in a while, and there was a lot to go through. So let's get straight into it. Okay, we've got Palace. We've got Palace coming up Monday night. Obviously, Patrick Vieira was the talk of all that. Before that, though, there were some interesting questions around sort of Arsenal's attacking threat. We know Arsenal. I saw that we were level on points with Villa in the table, but they've scored double the amount of goals this season. We scored 5. Toothless in the first 3 games. Better since the last international break, but still not firing the way we want to be. And he was, rightly asked about that. And I think, we've discussed it on previous shows. We've touched on it on Forever Arsenal as well, that the defence has improved. And when asked about the, increasing attacking threat that Arsenal need, one of his answers was basically that, through the international break, they've been working on things, but there have been limited players available. We've had more players on international duty than I think we did in the last one. There's only so much they can do in training when you know that a lot of the players are away. And then he touched on Arsenal basically needing, I used the word efficiency, needing efficiency in front of goal. Now, why have I included this as kind of one of the first things we talk about? Well, I wanted to touch on that word efficiency. Not that I take issue with it, because I don't think Arteta's wrong, but I think when he says efficiency in front of goal, it suggests to me that he's basically saying, we're creating chances, we're not taking them. And I think it's quite the opposite. I actually think for the lack of chances we create and have created under Arteta for the last year or whatever, we've been fairly efficient. I mean, we miss chances, I know, but I also think there are games where we don't know that we can even create chances, and if we score a goal or two, it's because someone like Aubameyang or Pepe or Lacazette have been firing that day. Even Bukayo Saka, who's had to chip in a lot of goals, Smith Rowe of late. So I'm sort of in a position where I don't think it's about efficiency in front of goal. I think it's about efficiency going forward. I think it's about efficiency in what we do in certain areas, being more of a threat, being naturally more dangerous. I think the team's really lacking that, and I think Arteta's got a really favourable 4 games now before the next international break, because it's Palace on a Monday night, Villa on a Friday night, then you go to Leicester, who aren't in form at all, and then it's Watford at home. When you see those fixtures, there's no better time really to start putting the ball in the back of the net and showing some of our flair and some of our attacking intent. So I really wanted to touch on that. It was interesting. That was one of the kind of first things that I sort of saw when reading up on the quotes and watching what he said. But yeah, I think efficiency in front of goal, interesting way to put it. I think Arsenal basically just need to start finding their spark, looking dangerous again. But we'll talk about some of the players who might be available for Monday night for Palace, because as we know, some of you might have seen already doing the rounds, Martinelli could be out and unavailable, and he was one of the players that I was hoping would add something going forward. But anyway, let's talk about that Palace game. Patrick Vieira, the Palace manager. I think a lot of people said that Palace, that's it, they're going to be my second team this season, when we saw Vieira go there. He's had a decent start. And Arteta has some good things to say about him. Being asked about Patrick Vieira as a player and a captain, here's what Arteta said. He's an Arsenal legend, and I hope he gets the reception he deserves for what he did for the club, not only as a player, but also for what he transmitted as a person. He was a captain of the club in the most successful era in the last many years, and it is great to have him back. Now, interestingly, he was then asked about how sort of Vieira's adapted as a Premier League manager. Now, when we were looking for a new manager after Emery, the big thing against Arteta was he's never had a job, whereas Vieira has been out there doing various jobs. I think one of the last was Nice, and he's had sort of a very, very varied experience. And so to ask Arteta on how he's adapted to the Premier League, listen, I understand the question, but whether Arteta's the best place to answer it, I don't know. But obviously he talked about how Vieira was very experienced. He's someone who has had these different experiences in management, but also as a player. He played in Serie A, played in the Premier League, came back as a veteran of the game, played for Man City as well. But then he was asked about Vieira's style of football, which I thought was interesting, because basically the question, the way it was posed, is basically asking whether the way Palace set up under Vieira, very different to under Hodgson, was going to give Arsenal a bit more of an opportunity, give Arsenal a bit more of a, I don't know, more of a sight at goal, more open spaces, I suppose. I mean, when I've seen Palace, they've definitely looked a more, what's the word, expansive, I suppose. A slightly more expansive team. I think they want to play out the back. They're definitely a team that want to have a bit more of a go than they traditionally did under Hodgson, though I don't think he was as boring or as defensive as perhaps people used to say he was. Asked about that, he basically replied that, it's still early, he doesn't know how they're going to set up for this game. I mean, I'm interested to see as well whether Vieira sticks with the 4-3-3 or goes a bit more 4-4-2, tries to keep it a bit tighter at the back. But then, as I said, they're quite expansive, they're quite open under Vieira, and I imagine that they're going to see Arsenal as a bit of a wounded animal, or at least an Arsenal that aren't at the level that we have seen over the last decade, 2 decades or whatever, nowhere near it, and think that maybe they can get something. So it'll be interesting to see how Vieira wants to approach that game when he takes Palace on Monday night. And then, of course, he was asked about whether the fans will react positively to Patrick Vieira's return. He said, of course, he's expecting an amazing reception for him. But the reason I'm chuckling now is I'm reading ahead to some of the later notes where he was basically asked whether he'd like to have played against Patrick Vieira. And I thought this quote was funny, so I'll read the whole thing. He said, no, he was very dominant. He was physically really gifted, technically too. He had the right temper. He was brave and he could score goals. He could do a bit of everything, and he was remarkable. Sorry, the bit that had me chuckling was just the way Arteta, who always strikes me as someone who backs himself with anything. And also, he's not one to shy away from a scrap. I mean, I remember him as an Arsenal player, even an Everton player. He was one who got stuck in, got involved. So the fact that his opening answer to whether he'd have liked to have played against Vieira was just a straight up no. Shows you how good Vieira was. The fact that Arteta wouldn't even want to do it, but I'm sure he'd have given it his best. Patrick Vieira, he's coming back on Monday night. He'll be bringing Palace to the Emirates. He was a famous part of that Invincibles team. A team that are a big inspiration for one of the movies that is coming, the movie that's coming out soon. Arsene Wenger, I think the film's called Arsene Wenger Invincible. And of course he was asked about the Invincibles. Arteta just said that they're a joy to watch, team filled with leadership, and I think with this film coming out, I think there's going to be more eyes probably than we've seen for a while under Arteta's reign on just quite a sort of understanding on how far Arsenal have come. How far Arsenal have fallen since 2004 and that time. I mean, even 2006, the Champions League final, to be fair. But obviously that movie's coming out. Vieira's coming back. There's a lot of nostalgia surrounding Arsenal at the moment. And I think Arteta's just going to have to get a few 3 points on the board just to kind of weather through that and just remind people that, there's a process, as he says, and that we are aiming to get back to that level one day. But yeah, whether he does or not remains to be seen. But yeah, there's a lot of sort of reminders of the past there for sure. Let's fly through some other stuff. Obviously, he was named manager of the month for his results in September. Rightly so, absolutely deserved it. This is what he said about that. He said, yeah, it's not personal because it is for the people behind, I think he means behind the scenes, behind who helped to achieve those trophies. It is nice, and we will now just focus on the next thing, which is to win more football matches, and hopefully there'll be more to come, because that would mean we are doing the right things. Arteta's aim should be to win the October Manager of the Month award, because the fixtures are favourable. Not easy, favourable. And he should be getting the kind of results that put him back in that discussion again. So let's see if he does. He was asked about Lacazette, which I thought was interesting, because he was basically asked about whether Lacazette could be leaving in January. We've barely seen Lacazette feature. I thought he had a decent cameo against Brighton. You could see we were lacking a striker like him in that game. But whether he could be leaving in January, Arteta said, "We are focusing on getting the best out of Laka, and he shows every day that his commitment is here. We just want to give him the right minutes that he can show his quality and help the team to do better." Typically vague answer from Mikel Arteta, as was his answer about Jack Wilshere, because he was asked about that too, about sort of, we've seen the pictures of him going to academy games, we've seen pictures of him in training, asked about kind of what plan we have for him going forward, and Arteta said the usual, it's great to have him around, and I mean, that's kind of all you can say right now about Jack Wilshere. It probably is great to have him around. I think if you're one of the youngsters trying to break through, we've seen Smith Rowe and Saka, and now the latest, Charlie Patino, who everyone's talking about him, comparable to Jack Wilshere in his playing style in some ways. I imagine having Jack there would be great for him. But Amari Hutchinson as well. I mean, what a goal he scored the other day. So I think it can only be good for these youngsters to have someone of Jack Wilshere's kind of stature, importance. I know he didn't achieve what he wanted in the game, but just to have him around, he's so loved. I don't know, I'm sure Arsenal have big plans for him in terms of what they can do to get him to be a part of the club going forward. We've always joked about whether he has a future as a player again. Doesn't look like that's going to happen. For Arsenal anyway. But as some kind of coach and doing his badges that Arteta's confirmed he's going to do, yeah, maybe Wilshere will be a part of the staff going forward. So let's see. He touched on Aaron Ramsdale, positive start to life in North London. Asked about whether Ramsdale could be beating Pickford as England's number one. I'm just going to give my thoughts on that just really briefly. Yeah, I think he absolutely can. I think England are blessed with a fantastic squad, one of the best that I can ever remember. But I think the goalkeeping position is one area where I think it is up for grabs. I think Aaron Ramsdale can make that position his own. He's proving very early on to be quite a complete keeper. Now, what I need to see now is the consistency and the concentration. Can he deliver what we've seen in his opening 4 games across the season? Can he do over 2-3 seasons? That's what the best keepers do. But he's still young. And he's learning. And he'll only get better, you'd think. But I absolutely think he can be challenging Pickford for that number 1 spot. So we'll see if he does. Let's move into some of the main bulk of this press conference. Or at least I think the bits that are going to get Arsenal fans really listening here. I'm just going to read out the quotes. Make of it what you will. I'll give my opinion at the end. But he was asked about Gabriel Martinelli's lack of game time. Now, I think I saw that Martinelli performed quite well in a behind closed doors friendly last week, which is great. Did well in the Cup. I think apart from the start of the season where he was playing in those opening Premier League games, he didn't do great in those games. I think he did okay. But I think, people are starting to worry about his future, his involvement in this team. He signed a contract in the summer of 2020, only joined in 2019. But I understand why these questions are there. So asked about Martinelli's lack of game time, this is what Arteta said. Well, because of the amount of players we have in those positions, first of all, he had some games that he played. He started against Brentford and he started against Chelsea as well. Unfortunately, he got injured last week. That's interesting. So remember that, guys. But he said, unfortunately, he got injured last week. It's a minor injury. We don't know if he's going to be available for Monday. We have a lot of options with Gabby, and we need to find the right space for him to grow within the squad. He was then asked about Martinelli's progression. He said, no, if you look at the number of games he's played, the injuries he's suffered have been big setbacks. We sometimes forget his age, what he's done and where he is. We need to try help him to maintain that balance because you can generate frustration that, in my opinion, comes out of a not very realistic diagnosis. You need to do that. And then asked if Martinelli could go out on loan, he said, I'm very happy with him. We're not thinking about anything like that. Quick thoughts on Martinelli. I am starting to worry a little bit about the game time. Not bringing him on against Brighton was a weird one for me. Again, I read those quotes. They're very vague to me. They're very kind of like, we need to, work on his development. We need to be sort of giving him the right environment and all these things. Listen, give the guy game time. When Saka looks exhausted and injured for Arsenal against Brighton, you bring on Martinelli, especially when Pepe's already on the pitch. That's the natural change. So to bring on Maitland-Niles, I thought was a bit of a strange one, though Maitland-Niles has done okay of late. I want to see Martinelli be a weapon we can bring on off the bench. He's not in my starting 11 at the moment. I think there are players who deserve the spot, but I do think he should be more involved. So we'll see, and we hope this injury isn't too serious, because he just don't want any more setbacks like that. I understand the injury he had. I think it was a knee injury before, and measuring his kind of return. I hear that. But we do need to get him into the team sooner rather than later, getting some proper minutes. So let's see what happens there. Just to round off, he was asked about some midfield stuff, asked about losing El Neni and Partey to AFCON. He said that is something that, depending on who's available, we might have to find a solution to, so keep an eye on that one. And then interestingly, he was asked about Matteo Guendouzi, and basically if there's any chance of him returning after this season. He said for right now, he's gone for the season. I think he's having a really good spell at Marseille, and it's part of the plan that we made with him. I think that's quite interesting there. He then says he's continued his development and will make a decision at the end of the year. And then asked if Guendouzi has played his last game for Arsenal, he said, I think you cannot say that about a player who is owned by the club. So yeah, maybe the door's not completely shut on Guendouzi. Let's see. Anyway, guys, that was quick, that was brief. As always, Arteta going through a lot of stuff, but let us know in the comment section what kind of stood out to you. If there's anything else you thought that was quite key from that press conference that you think we should talk about. As you know, we've got the warm-up and everything coming out, so we'll be talking much more ahead of that Palace game. So you'll see that coming out throughout the rest of the week. Thanks very much, guys. Appreciate you joining as always. Like and subscribe as I hit my mic. And yeah, go check out what Arteta said as well. Big 4 weeks coming up. Cheers, guys. See you soon.